main sponsor.
LB Yasa Isuru, unparalleled rewards for a trusted deposit.
Good evening and welcome. This is News First, where the people come first. I'm Azra Hassan. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for this evening.
New Prime Minister assumes duties. 4 committees appointed to resolve the issues. Does the Prime Minister have a majority? Will act independent in Parliament and support the Prime Minister. A statement from the General Secretary of the SLPP. SJB, SLFP, TNA, JVP and the 10 affiliated parties reiterate that they will not accept positions in the government led by the new Prime Minister. No deal gummer set up opposite temple trees. Malvana court case against Basil postponed.
The President Media Division says the nationwide curfew will be lifted at 6 a.m. tomorrow and reimposed at 6 p.m. on the same day. The PMD said once reimposed, the curfew will be in effect until 5 a.m. on Sunday, the 15th of May. Accordingly, no one shall be permitted to stay on a public road, a railway line, a public park, a public playground or any other public place or beach except under the authority of a written permit issued by an authorizing officer. Meanwhile, the Commissioner General of Essential Services said that government and private pharmacies, private nursing homes and treatment centers are permitted to remain open until 7 p.m. during curfew. Newly appointed Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe assumed duties this morning at the Prime Minister's office.
Ranil Wickremesinghe assumed duties as the 26th Prime Minister of Sri Lanka this morning. Meanwhile, the Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka met with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and conveyed greetings and good wishes. America, Japan and Australia, who are members of the Quad Alliance, also conveyed good wishes to the newly appointed Prime Minister. US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chung, met Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe this afternoon and extended well wishes. In a tweet, she said yesterday that his appointment as Prime Minister and the quick formation of an inclusive government are the first steps to addressing the crisis and promoting stability. Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, Muzukoshi Hidaiki, congratulated the newly appointed Prime Minister during a meeting between the duo. Australian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, David Hawley, tweeted that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's appointment is an opportunity for Sri Lanka to address the current crisis. He added, quote, encourage the establishment of a new government to work towards an enduring solution for all Sri Lankans, end quote. Meanwhile, several Western countries issued messages congratulating the new Prime Minister. High Commissioner of Canada to Sri Lanka, David McKinnon, in a tweet said, quote, Sri Lanka urgently needs a stable government to address its economic and political challenges in a way that is inclusive and accountable. I hope that the appointment of Ranil Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister will enable that, end quote. Meanwhile, the Chinese embassy said Ambassador Ki Zeng Hong also met Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and extended good wishes.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has appointed 4 committees to immediately solve the issues faced by the people. Wajirabe Wardana and Palitharange Bandara have been appointed to ensure a continuous supply of essential food items without any shortages. Rohan Vijay Wardana has been appointed to look into the shortage of medicine in the country. Akila Viraj Karyawasam has been appointed to look into the fertilizer crisis, while Sagar Ratnayaka is assigned to look into the fuel crisis. General Secretary of the United National Party, Palitharange Bandara, says the 4 committees will present proposals to resolve these issues upon holding discussions with the relevant entities that oversee the subjects.
Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Akila Viraj Karyawasam, expressed views regarding the establishment of the new government during a media briefing held at the UNP headquarters in Sirikota today.
ජනතාව ඉතාමත් උනන්දුවෙන් බලා සිටිනවා දැන් මේ අලුතෙන් පත් කරන මේ කැබිනට් එක කොයි වගේ වෙයිද අත් වශයෙන්ම අර වෙනදා වගේ
It will not be conventional. Everyone in the cabinet will be appointed according to the need. This cabinet will be appointed for a certain period of time to rebuild the country. Today, the old outdated system of governance where the cabinet ministers are given privileges is rejected by everyone. No one accepts or approves it. We will discuss this matter with everyone and put forward a mechanism approved by the people as soon as possible. We are hoping to move forward with a program that involves everyone in parliament. Many parties are represented here. The cabinet will represent many parties.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තුළ පුළුවන් තරම් මේ හැම පාර්ශ්වයක්ම එකතු කරගෙන කියන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තමයි අපි ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. ඉතින් පක්ෂ ගණනාවක් මේක නියෝජනය කරනවා. තව පක්ෂවල කණ්ඩායම් නියෝජනය කරන කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයක් වේ. ඔබතුමාලා නිල වශයෙන් කියන්නේ මේකට ආරාධනා කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන අනිත් පක්ෂවලට නෑ ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන්
We have discussed it already. It will be implemented at the right time. Do not worry. Participation from every party, including the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, will be there in the government. Therefore, do not specify it right now. We will be able to move forward with the support of more than 124 MPs. We want to establish a government. We need the majority for that. If we can ensure majority support, there won't be an issue. All the leaders who want to provide solutions to this crisis will step forward.
Can Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe secure the majority support in Parliament? Several political parties expressed their views in this regard today.
The Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Sagar Karyawasam, said that his party will remain independent in Parliament. However, he said they will tender their support to Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to overcome the prevailing economic crisis in the country.
Meanwhile, the Central Committee of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party had decided not to support the new Prime Minister. The President and the new Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, invited our party to support them. They even invited us to take up certain ministerial positions and to be a part of the new government. After a long discussion on the matter, we have decided not to be part of any government that is formed under Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. As the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, we expected them to form an all-party government. We were invited for discussions with the President regarding this proposal, but none of these proposals have been implemented. All of a sudden, Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as the Prime Minister yesterday. The President did not discuss this move with any of the political parties in Parliament. Under these circumstances, as the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, we decided not to be part of this new government. But there are several burning issues in the country that have directly affected the general public. There is a food shortage and a fuel shortage in the country. On top of that, there is a power crisis as well. If the government intends to solve these issues by forming a new government under the leadership of Ranil Wickremesinghe, we will support them. But our support will only be given to solve these burning issues. We will not support any move that will cause harm to the people of our country. We are always with the people. We always consider the suggestions and demands made at the people's protest site.
අරගල භූමියෙන් එන යෝජනා සහ ඉල්ලීමුත් අපි සෑම විටම සැලකිල්ලට ගන්නවා.
No, our Central Committee and the Parliamentary Group requested me to do so, but I told them I will not take up any position. As a party, we nominated Nimal Siripala de Silva.
අපි විපක්ෂයේ ඉන්නේ දැන් පාර්ලිමේන්තු සංවිධිය යම වෙනසක් වෙනවානේ දැන් විපක්ෂ නායක ධූරය සම්බන්ධනුත් වෙනවා නේද අපි තාම එවැනි කාරණා
Yes, we have not discussed these matters. We don't know what kind of a situation will be in the country by the time the president convenes parliament. We also don't know what problems will arise regarding the opposition leader by the time parliament convenes. So we will act accordingly.
අපි කටයුතු කරනවා
We held 4 rounds of discussions with the Samagi Jana Balawegya. However, at the end, after news was out that Ranil Wickremesinghe will be sworn in as the new Prime Minister, he had dropped all of the harsh conditions and said that he is now willing to take up the post of Prime Minister. The proposal for an all-party government was put forward by us. If such a government is formed tomorrow, we will be a part of that government. It must be an all-party government in the fullest sense of the word.
10 parties that broke away from the government with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party explained their stance today.
ඒ නිසා අපි පක්ෂ 10 එකමුතුවට අයත් മന്ത്രിවරු අපි සියලු දෙනාම විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයේ
All the parliamentarians of the 10 parties in the opposition will act independently. We will support the government if it proposes favorable steps. Foreign nations will support establishing stability and finding gas, fuel and imported milk powder, but they will request the MCC. India will request certain assets if they are to provide fuel or food. Given such a circumstance, society will sit behind and give up. The public will have a negative mentality. If attempts are made to take advantage of that mentality to harm the country by betraying it, we will not allow it. We are scared that Ranil Wickremesinghe will complete what Basil Rajapaksa failed to do. I believe Basil Rajapaksa is Ranil Wickremesinghe in disguise, and Ranil Wickremesinghe is Basil Rajapaksa in disguise. The 10 breakaway parties will continue to play an active, responsible political role in and out of parliament.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ කියන්නේ ටයිකෝට් අඳින බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ. ඊටාම වගකිව යුතු දේශපාලන භූමිකාවක් අපි පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තුලත් ඉන් පිටතත් අපේ පක්ෂ 10 එකමුතු විසින් ඉටු කරනවා. ආණ්ඩුව ගෙදර යවන්න විශ්වාසභංග යෝජනා ගෙනාපු.
The parties that brought forward no confidence motions to send the government home became adamant and worried to take over the government or participate in an all-party alliance. This situation pushed Ranil Wickremesinghe into the position of the Prime Minister. This country needs a government. We will not try to topple this government. We are not convinced that this government will bring solutions to the table. We are of this stance considering Ranil Wickremesinghe's past.
අපිට ඒ විශ්වාසය ඇති කරගන්න අවශ්‍ය පසුබිම සකස් කරලා දෙන්නෙත් නැහැ.
ඔබතුමාලට ආරාධනාවක් ලැබුණොත් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට එකතු වෙලා සහයෝගයෙන් වැඩ කරන්න කියලා
ආරාධනා තියෙනවා ලැබිලා තියෙනවා.
We have received invitations. Given the circumstances, the 10 parties will not accept any ministerial portfolios. It is the nature of Ranil Wickremesinghe to portray a good personality. However, as soon as he gets a position, a different Ranil Wickremesinghe comes out. The support of the 113 MPs will depend on his behaviour.
ආකාරය අනුව තමයි 113 නැති බව ඉක්මනින් පෙනේද ප්‍රමාද වී පෙනේද නැත්නම් නොපෙනීම යයිද කියලා තීරණය වෙන්නේ ඒ අනුව.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa has replied to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa over concerns about the post of Prime Minister. The opposition leader in a letter said that the Samagi Jana Balawegya will not nominate any members for the proposed cabinet of ministers that the president is appointed by directly disregarding the mandate of the people. Sajith Premadasa said, as per his letter to the president dated the 12th of May 2022, he is committed to serving as Prime Minister in a government set up under him subject to the conditions mentioned in the said letter. The opposition leader also reminded the President in his letter that when he was invited to accept the post of Prime Minister, he did not say no to the offer. The letter notes that opposition leader Sajith Premadasa and the Samagi Jana Balawegya believe that entering into a program which allows the President to remain in his position indefinitely, disregarding the calls from the people, is a blow to the mandate of the people.
What is the stance of the Samagi Jana Balawegya?
අපි කියනවා පැහැදිලිවම සර් ෆේල් වගේම රනිලුත් නැවත වරක් ෆේල්.
Sir has failed and so has Ranil. This is the end of your political era. they have replaced a Rajapaksa under the guise of a Wickramasinghe. I saw the youth at Gotagogama chanting Ranil Rajapaksa yesterday. He is indeed Ranil Rajapaksa. I was told that businessmen living overseas who are protected by this government are making deals with businessmen who are alleged to have owned floating armories. They are now working together to pump dollars into the country. The price to buy over an MP is now 100 million rupees. The people will soon be able to find out who the genuine politicians are.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා කියලා තියෙනවා මේ කිව්වා ඊයේ මේ 114 පෙන්නන්න පුළුවන් බහුතරය මටත් කතා කරලා තියෙන 114. තාම යාට 114ක් තිය 14ක්වත් හරියට නැහැ තාම. දැන් හොට්ටුවේ පිළිස සහයෝගය දක්වනවා යන්න. එතකොට 114 කියන එක උට සාමාන්‍ය දෙයක්. ඔය ඉතින් එතකොට යාට එයා ඉතින් ඒකනේ කියන්නේ රාජපක්ෂ කෙනෙක් කියන්නේ. හොට්ටුවේ ඉතුරුලා ඉන්න කට්ටිය රාජපක්ෂවාදීන්. වික්‍රමසිංහට විරුද්ධව ඒගොල්ලෝ හිටියේ දිගට. දැන් රනිල් මහත්තයාට දෙන්න උනේ ඔබතුමාලා මේ යන්න පරක් වුණා ගන්න පරක් වුණා. අපේ නායකතුමා තානාපතිවරුත් එක්ක කතා කරන්නේ.
Our leader was holding discussions with diplomats and economic experts to look into the possibilities of obtaining foreign grants. The final decision on the possibility of taking over a government and fulfilling the people's requirements was made yesterday morning. We are not expecting rewards in exchange for ministerial portfolios. We are hoping to establish a people-centric government. Ranil Wickramasinghe ruined that plan. According to the constitution, the Prime Minister is appointed based on the majority's vote. Ranil Wickramasinghe's faction has only one parliamentary seat. A politician who was rejected by the entire country has now come into power. Why was the post not given to Sajid Premadasa? The President was aware that he will have to resign from his post if he was appointed as the Prime Minister. He knew that he could further destroy this country while continuing to be in power if Ranil Wickramasinghe was appointed. He did not appoint Ranil Wickramasinghe to revive our country, but to protect his family.
Meanwhile, the Tamil National Alliance spokesperson, President's Council M.A. Sumandiran, expressed his views about the newly appointed government. He expressed these views after attending a meeting at the opposition leader's office.
Our position with regard to the new formation of the new government is that this is an anti-democratic move. The appointment of the Prime Minister is anti-democratic. The President himself has now lost the people's mandate that he originally got. That's very clear. The Prime Minister whom he has appointed never had a mandate from the people in this parliament. He lost his election in the Colombo district. So this is an undemocratic move. Nevertheless, given the serious situation that the country's economy is in, we will support the new government in respect of all the right things that they do. If those are beneficial to the country and beneficial to the people, we will not withhold our support.
This is the stance of the Frontline Socialist Party.
Who can obtain more loans for the country? Who is the person who can keep the IMF in the good books? Now the leaders of this country are being appointed based on who can obtain loans from foreign nations. Ranil took oaths as the Prime Minister of the country yesterday. Every rational faction that expresses their opinion says that Ranil has international ties. He has the capability to obtain loans. He acts as if he can negotiate with the IMF. The root cause of this current situation was the loans that Sri Lanka obtained, and now what we have to do is appoint a person who doesn't obtain many loans. He is not a person who can be trusted. Don't believe that he is a hero who took over to save the country from this crisis. He was pushed to it. The Indian High Commission as well as the US Embassy pushed Ranil into this. Do not think of him as a hero. He also must be wondering how he fell into this situation. After Ranil was appointed as Prime Minister, Gotabaya Rajapaksa must leave. He has no right to stay in office. Do you remember? Regardless of political opinion and partisan politics, ordinary Sri Lankans are being impacted by a massive economic crisis. The people were united in their call for a change in this system. Continuing to maintain divisions along party lines will only serve to push the country further down this dark abyss and benefit politicians. Don't forget how tax concessions given to import sugar resulted in the loss of billions that could have been used to import COVID vaccines when we needed it the most. Even items used by ordinary Sri Lankans such as coconut oil and garlic wasn't spared. Remember the scams that resulted in millions and millions in losses? Why was crucial information on medicine and medical equipment at the NMRA wiped clean all of a sudden? What happened to the investigations? Do you remember how $6.9 million was paid for a Chinese ship that didn't even unload fertilizer in Sri Lanka? And immediately after that, a mysterious liquid nitrogen fertilizer was imported at exorbitant prices from an Indian company and distributed among innocent farmers. All of this destroyed and wasted your tax money. These are but only a very few incidents of corruption and gross mismanagement of public funds. If we are to report on all incidents of corruption and mismanagement, this news bulletin might have to be telecast continuously over several days. What was the result of all of this? One-sided agreements with foreign nations and companies that has resulted in Sri Lanka losing control of some of our most valuable national assets. What will happen to the American New Fortress Agreement that was signed at midnight? Will the western terminal of the Colombo port be taken back from India's Adani company? What will happen to the act that was passed granting massive tax concessions to businesses at the Chinese Colombo port city? The people who stand in queues for hours to purchase essentials like gas, fuel and medicine can remember well these acts of corruption, mismanagement and the traitorous agreements that were signed. The people will not forget this time.
A new protest site dubbed No Deal Gama was set up opposite the temple trees in Colombo. This site was previously known as Minago Gama. People at the No Deal Gama protest site are calling on new Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to set aside political deals and punish the Rajapakshas as well as provide solutions to the current issues. We are trying to make sure that no matter who is appointed as the leader, they are accountable to the people. The problem in Sri Lanka is that leaders are not appointed. Leaders do what they want. MPs do what they want. After that, they go home. We are trying to make sure they are held responsible to the people. The policies demanded by the people should be formulated and implemented. Our message is that they should serve the people. We do not want a government that will eliminate diesel queues for 2 days, give us food and send us home. We need permanent solutions to the economic crisis, because if we take loans now and somehow manage to settle the debt, our children will have to face the same crisis in the future to settle the accumulated debt.
The case against former Minister Basil Rajapaksa and Thirukumar Nadesan over the controversial house in Malwana was postponed to the 3rd of June. The case was taken up today before Gampa High Court Judge Nimal Ranabira. A decision on whether or not the case will be continued was to be delivered today.
The case was filed under the provisions of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act regarding the alleged misuse of state funds to purchase a 6-acre plot of land in Malwana bordering the Kalani River and building a luxury house and a swimming pool and maintaining a farm. Counsel for the first defendant informed court that former Minister Basil Rajapaksa could not be present in court due to the problematic situation in the country. Counsel appearing for the second defendant, Thirukumar Nadesan, informed court that their client had returned to the island from overseas to appear in court today, but unfortunately fell sick and therefore cannot appear in court. State Counsel Krishanka Fernando appeared for the prosecution. After considering the submissions that were made, High Court Judge Nimal Ranavira postponed the case to the 3rd of June. Counsel for both defendants agreed to have their clients appear in court on the next date.
Protests demanding gas cylinders were held in many areas during the curfew window today.
A protest was staged obstructing vehicular movement in Peliagoda along one lane of the Negombo road. A heated situation was reported in Dematagoda. The people who have been waiting to purchase gas for 1 week are yet to receive gas cylinders. A protest demanding gas cylinders was held at the Navala junction. Long queues to purchase fuel were seen in many areas of the country today. Some filling stations remained closed as fuel supply was disrupted during the curfew period. Many filling stations in Anuradhapura remained closed due to this. People were seen outside the Ratnapura filling station despite heavy showers in the area. The Public Utilities Commission said that power supply will be disrupted for 5 hours tomorrow. There will be no power cuts on Sunday in line with the Vesak Poya day. Power plants that use diesel, naphtha or furnace oil did not operate during the past few days. We did not have the required stocks. Over 45% of electricity is generated through hydropower. We are trying to use the best option to manage our resources in a way that will affect the public the least.
News First with the people.
The peaceful protest at Golf Face opposite the President's office in Colombo is running for its 35th day today. News First, Rochelle Tumodara reports.
Currently, I'm here opposite the President's office in Golf Face, where the Occupy Golf Face protest site continues for the 35th consecutive day. So there are people flocking here demanding the resignation of the President and the government.
We are here to support the youth. I know everybody is down about what's happening politically and all those things. But one big breakthrough is we have united as one Sri Lankan family.
අපි පොඩි කාලේ ක්‍රීඩාවක් සෙල්ලම් කරා ටින් කඩනවා වගේ. දැන් ඒක තමයි මේ ආණ්ඩුව කරන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ උඹලම හදනවා, උඹලම කඩනවා. දැන් උඹලා තන්නි කර ගේමක් ගෙනියන්න.
The government is playing games we used to play as children. Ranil is the Rajapaksa's savior. We asked Gotabaya Rajapaksa to leave with his brothers, not to bring in his older brothers. Ranil Wickremesinghe is someone who robbed banks in daylight. He was always a part of a political deal. Our main demand is for Gota to go home.
මේ කලබල ඇති කරලා ඔක්කොම කරලා මුගේ වාති රනිල් පත් කරනවා. මේ බේරෙන්න හදන්නේ. මොකා පත් කරත් ඔය ඔරු වැඩමයි කරන්නේ. අපි අහනවා ගෝඨාභයගෙන් රනිල් කියන්නේ අවලංගු ගාසියක්. මේ රටේ ජනතාව ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරපු මිනිහෙක්. හිසේ එකක් කුමට කොට්ටේ මාරු කරන එකවත් අතීසාරයට අඹුඩේ ගහන එකවත් නෙමෙයි නන්දසේන. බඩ කරන්න තියෙන්නේ මේ රටේ ජනතාවට හිස නමලා මේ ජනතාවට බලය පවරපන්.
මේ රෙජිමෙන් අයින් වෙලා රටට අලුත් පාලනයක් ලබා දෙන්න. වඳින්නම් Gotabaya Rajapaksa ඉවත් වෙන්න.
Her media briefing opposing the new Prime Minister was held at the protest site today. If he remains as the Prime Minister for the next 6 months, regardless of reviving the country from its crises, it is clear that they will be able to cover up the corruption that was carried out by the Rajapaksa government. Is this the change that the youth suffered for? He has failed 5 times before. Doesn't our country have experts eligible for the post that we have to depend on someone like him to lead our country as the Prime Minister for the next 6 months? 6 teams of the CID arrived at the protest site to investigate the attacks that took place at Gotagogama and Mainagogama on the 9th of this month. You don't have to worry about this. You may be a witness or a victim of the incident. Hand over any evidence you have to this officer. The Legal Aid Commission of the Bar Association takes responsibility for this as well.
Meanwhile, representatives of the Trade Unions Coordinating Centre presented a letter to the President demanding his resignation. The letter points out that the President is guilty of aiding, abetting and providing legal protection to the thugs and the former Prime Minister in attacking the peaceful protesters at Gotago Gama. The letter highlights 13 main points, including a conspiracy to use the newly appointed PM Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is the main culprit of the bomb scam, to protect the Rajapakshas. A tense situation arose when only a few representatives of the Trade Union Coordinating Centre were allowed to pass through the police barricade at Don Baron Jayatilaka Mawatha. Later, the President's personal secretary Sugishwara Bandara met the trade unionists.
අපි දිගට වෘත්තීය සමිති ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගණනාවක් ආවා. ඒ අදත් ආවේ කියලා යන ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මහත්තයාට දැන් හොඳටම ඇති. රටේ ඇති තරමට දුක් විඳලා තියෙන්නේ. එතුමා තවදුරටත් මේ වෙන වෙන දීල් දාලා වෙන වෙන වැඩ නොකර රටේ මිනිස්සු ඉල්ලා හිට එල්ලීමට කන් දෙන්න කියලා කියන්නේ.
සාද ඔබතුමන්ලා වගේම අපේ පැත්තෙන් දෙන්න තියෙන උත්තරයක් අපි තියෙනවානේ. ඒකත් නොවරදාම හැකියික්මනින්ම මන්ත්‍රීතුමා අපේ වෘත්තීය සමිතියට ජනාධිපතිතුමා යන්න කියන එක තමයි.
Afterwards, representatives of the National Trade Union Coordinating Centre filed a complaint at the police headquarters regarding the attack on peaceful protesters in Gotago Gama. A heated situation arose when all trade unionists were not allowed to enter the police headquarters.
Be cool, be cool, be cool.
Only a few representatives of the Trade Union Coordinating Centre were allowed to enter.
The Sri Lankan rupee appreciated by 365 rupees against the US dollar following a directive from the central bank on interbank rates. Now the CBSL will announce the middle rates of USD-LKR exchange rate for interbank transactions based on the previous day's rate in the interbank market. Former Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy explained the reasons for the preemptive freeze of external debt repayments in the country. He made these remarks during a webinar organized by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce under the theme Navigating Through a Crisis.
There are those who say that this was not done in the right sequence, that the creditors should have been consulted before it was announced. All that is very true. But when the governor took office, within days he found himself with a situation where reserves, actually on that day, the 13th of April, reserves were down to $5 million US. Gross official reserves were down to $5 million I think the finance minister said it's less than 50 million in parliament the other day. But on that day, it was down to $5 million. And a few days later, we had a ISP coupon maturing, which had to be paid. So if we didn't do it on the 13th of April, we would have had a hard default because we wouldn't have been able to pay the coupon. So that is why it was done in the way it was done. And I think the creditors understand that. And it was a preemptive measure to have a standstill before full consultation, which is what is normally done. But everybody understood the circumstances under which that decision was made.
A People's Tribunal in the Netherlands heard a case on the killing of Sri Lankan journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge for the second day today. Among the witnesses who testified today was Sandha Eknaligoda, wife of journalist Pradikit Eknaligoda, and Ishanta Silva, the former OIC of the Organised Crimes Divisions of the Criminal Investigation Department.
3 media rights groups have set up a People's Tribunal in Netherlands over the killing of 3 journalists. The hearing on the case related to the assassination of Sri Lankan journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge in 2009 began yesterday. Sandha Eknaligoda, the wife of journalist Pradikit Eknaligoda, testified in person at the People's Tribunal in Netherlands today.
Between 2015 and 2019, I had to face many unpleasant incidents. Although the Rajapaksas are not in power, their lives have been placed within the institutional framework of the country. All victims of crime suffer at the hands of these lapses in the institutions that are supposed to investigate these crimes. Although The institutions of the state are responsible to hold the perpetrators of these crimes accountable for their actions when investigating crimes committed by groups wielding political power. This is how these institutions act. Because in Sri Lanka, politicians can influence these officers at any time, regardless of whether they are in power or not. That is how politics work in Sri Lanka.
සමාජයේ දේශපාලන හැකියාවන් සහ දේශපාලන ගතිකත්වය.
Former OIC of the Organised Crimes Division of the Criminal Investigations Department, Nishanta Silva, who conducted the investigation into the murder of Lasantha Wickramatunge, also testified at the People's Tribunal via Zoom today.
මේ අය සිදු කර විමර්ශනවලදී දැකපු දෙයක් තියෙනවා.
There is something that I saw when analysing the investigations conducted into this incident. They had attempted to blame another party for this murder. On the other hand, if the Terrorist Investigations Division had taken over the investigations, they should have done it better than the CID. But that did not happen. The file was just left closed. I only took over the investigation after 5 to 6 years. They had a better opportunity to go to these sites and conduct a better investigation. One thing that I saw was that these officers had tried to kill time and not conduct this investigation properly.
මගේ විමර්ශන ඥානය තුලදී මට නිරීක්ෂණය වුණ කරුණු.
With the prevailing inclement showery condition across the country, several low-lying areas in the Ratnapura town have already been inundated. Our correspondent said that the water level of the Kalu River has reached minor flood levels in the Ratnapura area owing to heavy showers. The Met Department predicts that the showery condition over southwestern part of the island to further enhance. Issuing advisory for heavy rains, the Met Department said heavy showers above 100 millimeters are likely at some places in the western, Sabaragamuwa and central provinces and in Galle and Mathura districts. The Met Department also noted that the wind speed could increase up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour at times. The National Building Research Organisation has issued landslide early warnings to the districts of Kalutara, Kandy, Galle, Mathura, Nuwara and Ratnapura districts. Meanwhile, the water levels in the Kasarri and Mausakale is rising owing to the heavy showers in the area. Two sluice gates of the Polgola Reservoir in Kandy has been opened owing to the inclement weather. The United Arab Emirates President His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan passed away at the age of 73 today.
Sheikh Khalifa served as a president of the UAE and ruler of Abu Dhabi since the 3rd of November 2004. Emirati state news agency tweeted, quoting the UAE's Ministry of Presidential Affairs, that there will be 40 days of official mourning with flags at half-mast and 3 days closure of ministries and official entities at the federal and local levels and the private sector. Sheikh Khalifa was elected to succeed his father, the late His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, who served as UAE's first president since the formation of the Union in 1971. Since becoming the president, Sheikh Khalifa has presided over major restructuring of both the federal government and the government of Abu Dhabi. The world's tallest tower in the UAE's Emirate of Dubai is named the Burj Khalifa after the late ruler.
And that's a wrap of this edition of Primetime News. For the Newsfirst team, I am Azra Hassan. Take care and good night.